Candace Owens is back in the spotlight, this time taking direct aim at Justin Baldoni's explosive new lawsuit against none other than Blake Lively. Just when we thought this legal saga couldn't get any messier, Candace jumped in and let's just say she's not holding back. In a now viral commentary, Candace Owens accused Baldoni of weaponizing the courts for fame and PR wins. She questioned whether this lawsuit was about real justice or just a power play in Hollywood's favorite game deflect sue repeat. With tensions running high and the internet deeply divided, her remarks have added gasoline to an already blazing fire. The lawsuit itself has stirred headlines for weeks with claims that Blake Lively intentionally spread harmful misinformation in retaliation for behind-the-scenes disputes. But according to Candace, it's all performative noise, another celebrity feud packaged for public consumption, and she's not alone. Social media is erupting with people questioning the motivations behind Baldoni's legal move, especially now that text messages, private emails, and YouTuber subpoenas are entering the frame. So what exactly did Candace Owens say that has Hollywood insiders whispering and legal experts scratching their heads? And what does this mean for Blake Lively, who's already been dragged through the court of public opinion? This is your full breakdown of the chaos, the commentary, and the consequences. From court filings to Twitter threads, from PR spin to possible perjury. This story is about much more than just celebrities. It's about who controls the narrative and what happens when truth becomes collateral damage. Let's get into it. Candace Owens didn't ease into the conversation. She kicked the door wide open. In a powerful 12-minute segment posted on her podcast, Owens outlined why she believes Justin Baldoni's newest legal assault on Blake Lively is a carefully crafted strategy meant to manipulate public sympathy, not a genuine quest for justice. She opened with a question that echoed across social media: why now? According to Owens, the timing of Baldoni's lawsuit is strategic, not accidental. After weeks of press fallout, influencer chatter, and leaked legal memos, Candace believes Baldoni's legal filing was designed to drown out growing criticism of his own actions, while positioning himself as the wounded party, and she wasn't finished. Owens criticized the media's framing of the lawsuit, pointing out that mainstream outlets rushed to paint Justin Baldoni as the moral victim, while sidelining Blake Lively's right to defend herself. She described the coverage as one-sided storytelling that fuels outrage, without offering real context. It was a sharp rebuke of Hollywood's selective activism. Candace asked why, in an industry that claims to value justice and equality only, certain voices are elevated while others, especially those who push back, are vilified. She argued that Blake Lively's silence was being manipulated into guilt, while Baldoni's loud accusations were being taken at face value. Her comments hit a nerve. Within hours, hashtags like #Justice or JustPer and #Candace on Baldoni began trending, with supporters praising her courage for calling out what many saw as Hollywood hypocrisy. Others criticized her for inserting herself into a situation with emotional stakes. But Candace doubled down. She reiterated that public figures who make public accusations should expect public analysis. Owens then shifted gears, calling attention to a bigger concern: the use of litigation as a branding tool. She referenced past celebrity lawsuits that ultimately seemed more focused on headlines than resolutions. This feels less like a courtroom issue and more like a publicity campaign, she said, citing Baldoni's history of aligning himself with popular movements and moments of social momentum. She wasn't denying the possibility that wrongdoing had occurred, but she was asking who truly benefits from this legal circus. And then she dropped a line that stopped many in their tracks: when you weaponize morality as a PR stunt, you don't just hurt your opponent, you damage every person who actually needed the truth. From there, the floodgates opened. Candace Owens' pointed criticism sparked an avalanche of attention. But to truly understand why her words hit so hard, we need to look deeper at Justin Baldoni's legal strategy and how it's being perceived both inside and outside of Hollywood. At the heart of Baldoni's lawsuit is a claim that Blake Lively engaged in what he describes as calculated reputational sabotage. According to the complaint filed in Los Angeles Superior Court, Baldoni alleges that Lively knowingly made defamatory statements to executives, brands, and press figures, creating a hostile environment that has caused him emotional, reputational, and professional harm. But here's the catch: so far, the specifics of those statements remain redacted or heavily protected under legal privilege. This has led commentators, including Candace Owens, to question whether the lack of transparency is an oversight or a feature. According to Owens, the ambiguity of the claims could be a deliberate move. You create a fog of scandal, she said, and in the absence of clear facts, the public fills in the blanks. That's not legal justice, that's trial by perception. Legal analysts have echoed her concerns. Prominent litigation attorney Angela Frey told a news outlet that while the lawsuit may be procedurally sound, the media rollout surrounding it is what raises eyebrows. She pointed to the synchronized nature of press leaks, social media activity, and influencer commentary that seemed oddly timed with court filings. It's almost as if the press strategy was drafted before the legal one, Frey said. Indeed, multiple outlets reported on Baldoni's lawsuit mere minutes after the filing, suggesting that press kits had already been distributed to favor journalists. And that's where Owens drew another sharp line: if you're filing lawsuits and prepping PR statements at the same time you're not seeking justice, you're staging a spectacle. But is that necessarily a bad thing? Some argue that in today's digital ecosystem, managing public opinion is part of any celebrity legal dispute. After all, reputations are built and destroyed in real time on social platforms, but Owens contends that when legal action becomes indistinguishable from media manipulation, truth becomes expendable. She also raised questions about Baldoni's legal representation. His lead attorney is a well-known Hollywood fixer famous for crafting narratives, as much as for crafting legal arguments. This choice, Owens argued, supports the theory that the lawsuit is as much about shaping a legacy as it is about winning a case, and the public they're noticing. Online polls show a noticeable shift in perception since the lawsuit was announced. Initially, support for Baldoni was strong. Many saw him as a victim of internal betrayal and admired his willingness to take a stand. But as Candace Owens and others began questioning the timing, the evidence, and the optics, support began to erode. Creators on YouTube, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, began digging deeper. Some published videos analyzing Baldoni's past public statements, trying to align them with current events. Others noted inconsistencies in his timeline and motivations. A few even suggested that this legal battle could be a strategic move to distract from other more damaging revelations about projects gone wrong or internal disputes at Wayfarer Studios. Then there's the matter of the subpoenas. In an unprecedented move, Baldoni's legal team issued subpoenas to content creators who had previously reported on the case, alleging that they might hold relevant communications or materials. This tactic raised alarms. Owens and others immediately questioned whether this was a legitimate attempt to gather evidence or an intimidation tactic aimed at silencing dissent. Going after independent voices, Owens said, says more about your fear of scrutiny than your pursuit of truth. That comment struck a chord. Creators began banding together, forming legal alliances and coordinating responses. Some even threatened counter litigation, citing abuse of process and violations of First Amendment protections. Suddenly, Baldoni wasn't just fighting Blake Lively. He was staring down a media backlash that included attorneys, commentators, and grassroots defenders of free speech. And it's here that Owens made perhaps her most important point: when celebrities use the legal system not to resolve private harm but to control public perception, they risk breaking the very trust they claim to be defending. As the case heads toward discovery, the public is left wondering what will be revealed and what will remain hidden. As Justin Baldoni continues to take his fight to the courtroom and the press circuit, one name remains unusually quiet: Blake Lively. And that silence, according to Candace Owens and a growing number of commentators, may not be what it seems. In most high-profile cases, silence from one party is viewed as a strategic move. But in the digital age, where silence is filled in by speculation, leaks, and interpretation, Blake's lack of public defense has left many confused, concerned, or even suspicious. Is she planning something powerful behind the scenes, or is she deliberately choosing not to engage because the lawsuit is thinner than it appears? Candace Owens leaned in hard on this silence in her breakdown of the case. When a celebrity who's normally very active on social media suddenly goes completely quiet, she said, "You know, the stakes are higher than PR. Blake Lively is calculating. And that silence, it's either protective or explosive." Her commentary pointed to a wider phenomenon: when women in Hollywood choose silence during conflict, it is almost always weaponized against them. Owens accused certain outlets of implying guilt by omission, citing headlines that question Lively's motives, frame her as evasive, or suggest she's dodging accountability. Yet, as Owens pointed out, the public has no idea what Lively has been advised by legal counsel or what she's dealing with behind the scenes. It's worth noting that some of the most damaging leaks in this saga haven't come from Blake's camp, but rather from people claiming to have insider knowledge of Baldoni's legal team and press advisors. And there's another angle to this silence. It may not be compliance, it may be resistance. Legal experts say that in civil litigation involving high-profile individuals, lawyers often recommend complete media blackout, especially when discovery is pending. One wrong word, said attorney Dana Knowles, and your client's tweet could be used as Exhibit A in court. That's why Blake may be deliberately withholding any public reaction to avoid giving Baldoni's team any ammunition, but that hasn't stopped speculation. Some bloggers and commentators have gone so far as to suggest that Blake is waiting for a major court victory or dismissal of the case to break her silence. Others believe she may be preparing a countersuit of her own, one that addresses not only the legal merit of Baldoni's accusations but the reputational harm she claims to have endured from being dragged into a very public spectacle. This theory is supported by Blake's recent legal filings, which, while not widely publicized, reportedly push back against Baldoni's claims. With direct counter-evidence including emails, text messages, and internal documents, none of these have been leaked, but court watchers believe they could paint a very different picture of events if they become public. So why hasn't Blake gone public with her side? Candace Owens offered a provocative possibility. Maybe she doesn't need to. Maybe the evidence speaks for itself and she knows that revealing it now only fuels the circus. That's a key theme in Candace's entire commentary. She argues that Baldoni thrives on attention, that this entire lawsuit has been structured in a way that turns real-life legal proceedings into a kind of entertainment. By choosing not to play along, Blake may be disrupting that strategy, but it's risky. In today's culture of real-time reactions and viral moments, silence is often misread. While some fans admire Blake's restraint, others are turning on her. In fact, some influencers, especially those unfamiliar with the legal details, have speculated wildly about her motives with no evidence whatsoever. Owens addressed this trend directly. People love drama more than truth, she said. And if Blake Lively doesn't give them drama, they'll invent it. She also criticized fellow creators who have jumped on the Baldoni bandwagon for engagement without vetting the claims they're repeating. In one clip, she even called out influencers by name, accusing them of regurgitating PR lines as if they were facts. This sparked backlash and a wave of content creators responded. Some accused Owens of defending Blake Lively simply to be contrarian. Others thanked her for holding up a mirror to the influencer ecosystem, where clicks often matter more than facts. But here's the most telling development. Even as Owens was attacked for her position, her questions resonated. Why has the lawsuit gone public without clear evidence? Why are creators being subpoenaed? And why is Blake Lively silent while the internet tears her apart? Whether that silence is strategic, self-protective, or something else entirely, one thing is clear: it has made this legal saga even more mysterious. And if Blake does eventually speak, the impact could be seismic. For now, though, the silence is deafening. As Candace Owens' critique of Justin Baldoni's lawsuit gained traction, a parallel controversy exploded across the content creator community: the subpoena scandal. And this wasn't just about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni anymore. This was about freedom of speech, digital journalism, and the growing fear that powerful celebrities were beginning to treat independent voices as threats to be silenced. The trigger, a legal maneuver that shocked both creators and legal experts alike. Justin Baldoni's legal team issuing subpoenas to YouTubers, podcasters, and even anonymous Twitter X users who had commented on or covered the legal battle in a critical or speculative manner. At first, many assumed it was just a rumor, but then came confirmation. Several creators received legal notices requesting correspondence, commentary records, and in some cases the sources behind their coverage of Baldoni's case. In other words, independent voices were being asked, some say coerced, into turning over internal documentation, even if they weren't directly involved in the case. That's when Candace Owens stepped back in. This is not just a legal overstep. It's a message, she warned. It says, talk about us the wrong way and we'll drag you into the system. That's not accountability, that's a threat. And Owens wasn't alone in raising red flags. Civil liberties groups immediately stepped forward. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression FIRE issued a public statement condemning the use of subpoenas against commentators as a dangerous precedent that undermines the very nature of free speech in digital spaces. Legal analysts agreed. Some argued that the subpoenas would never hold up in court because the material being requested was not directly relevant to the core allegations in the lawsuit between Baldoni and Lively. Others believed it was a strategic attempt to intimidate those who had shared alternative narratives, particularly those sympathetic to Blake or skeptical of Baldoni. It was in this chaotic legal environment that Candace Owens elevated the conversation. She explained that this wasn't about whether Blake was right or Justin was wrong. It was about whether the public still had the right to speak freely about celebrity behavior. Court filings and legal strategy without being dragged into legal proceedings themselves. She referenced her own experience being the target of smear campaigns and attempts to discredit her for holding unpopular opinions. What we are witnessing, Owens stated firmly, is not about defamation, it's about domination. Controlling the conversation by scaring the voices who dare to speak. Her words ignited even more conversation. Independent creators began releasing videos detailing their experiences with Baldoni's legal team. One podcaster described receiving a cease and desist style request simply for using publicly available legal documents in an analysis video. Another YouTuber claimed they were asked to preserve private messages with anonymous sources. Under threat of legal action, this shook the content creator world. It forced a broader conversation about how powerful figures, especially in entertainment, might be manipulating legal tools not to win court cases but to shape narratives, quiet critics, and scare others into silence. That conversation soon took on a life of its own. On Reddit, subforums lit up with discussions about legal harassment, the ethics of reporting on celebrity lawsuits, and the blurry line between public interest and personal liability. On Twitter, ex-legal experts created threads dissecting the language used in the subpoena, some arguing that the vague wording could be challenged as overly broad and possibly unenforceable. Meanwhile, journalists and watchdogs started doing what they do best. Digging deeper, some discovered that several of the creators targeted had previously criticized not just Baldoni's lawsuit, but the culture of performative litigation in Hollywood. They weren't merely reporting facts, they were connecting the dots. And those dots, when viewed in context, suggested a deeply uncomfortable pattern: lawsuits being used not to protect reputations, but to manage headlines. Candace Owens returned to this idea in a follow-up video that quickly went viral. When Justin Baldoni sends legal threats to YouTubers, he's not protecting truth, he's protecting his brand. This isn't about Blake Lively anymore, it's about narrative control. And when that becomes the point of a lawsuit, we all lose. The sentiment resonated. Within days, creators started uniting under a single digital banner, #subpoenaed and speaking. It became a rallying cry for those who felt targeted or silenced by celebrity legal teams. And it didn't take long for larger voices, some with millions of followers, to join the cause. Suddenly, Baldoni's lawsuit was no longer viewed as a bold stand for justice. It was being reframed as a dangerous overreach, one that might backfire. Because while legal pressure might silence some, it also motivates others to speak louder, and that's exactly what was happening. As Owens said in her final words on the matter, you can subpoena a name, but you can't silence an idea. And the idea that we must protect public speech even when it challenges celebrity narratives is more important now than ever. As the dust settles, at least for now, on the explosive feud between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, one truth is impossible to ignore: this story has become far more than a personal dispute between two Hollywood names. It has grown into a full-blown commentary on power, influence, and the intersection of justice and public image. And at the very center of that storm stands Candace Owens, boldly challenging what many were too cautious to say out loud. Her decision to speak out wasn't just about defending Blake Lively or criticizing Justin Baldoni. It was a direct critique of the way the entertainment industry uses lawsuits as both a weapon and a narrative device. Her position sparked necessary conversations about who controls the public narrative and what happens when that narrative gets tangled up in carefully orchestrated legal strategy, social media influence, and fear-driven silence. Through her voice, the debate became clearer: are we witnessing the pursuit of truth, or are we witnessing the performance of morality? And more importantly, who gets to decide? Candace Owens called out what she described as a playbook being used by Hollywood elites, an approach where lawsuits are drafted as carefully as screenplays and released to the press in tandem with curated interviews, timed leaks, and strategic silence. In this ecosystem, truth takes a backseat to timing, and credibility is less about evidence and more about narrative control. Justin Baldoni's lawsuit against Blake Lively was never going to stay confined to court documents. It was destined to spill into public discourse, to dominate headlines, and to serve as a test case for how celebrity culture navigates accountability. But once content creators, legal analysts, and independent commentators were pulled into the fray, it exposed something much more troubling: the creeping normalization of silencing dissent. Under the guise of defamation or legal necessity, the subpoenas issued to YouTubers and podcasters were a breaking point for many. What began as a legal case quickly took on the air of intimidation. And while Baldoni's legal team maintains that these were standard procedural steps, the broader public response told a different story. Viewers saw it as a chilling move, a warning shot aimed not at the rich or powerful but at everyday people who dared to ask uncomfortable questions. Candace Owens understood that. She knew what it meant when a lawsuit starts to target commentary and not just conduct. Her refusal to back down from this uncomfortable truth gave courage to many others who had been too wary to speak. And that's where the saga takes on its most lasting significance. Because it's not really about Blake or Justin anymore. It's about the culture we're enabling, one where high-profile individuals can take criticism as a threat and where public discourse can be policed not by fact-checking but by litigation. It's about how rapidly we're sliding toward a reality where challenging the story means risking your platform, your reputation, or your peace of mind. But the irony in trying to control the narrative, Justin Baldoni may have actually lost control of it. Public sentiment has shifted. What once seemed like a compelling case of standing up against reputational harm is now viewed by many as a cautionary tale of how celebrity influence can blur the lines between legal action and PR spin. And Blake Lively, once painted by critics as coldly calculating or evasive, is slowly being reevaluated. Her silence, originally interpreted as avoidance, is now being considered by some as discipline or even dignity. As for Candace Owens, her commentary didn't just make noise, it created momentum. Momentum for a wider movement of creators, commentators, and even fans who are tired of being told what to think and who to believe based on star power and curated optics. People are craving honesty, they want transparency, and when that transparency is absent, they want the freedom to ask why. This entire case has become a referendum on how we treat speech in the digital age, especially when that speech comes from outside the elite inner circles of Hollywood. The subpoena scandal in particular reminded everyone that we are living in a time when the gap between the famous and the free is growing. If asking questions online can now land you in a legal document, then what does that say about the future of content, commentary, and even casual discussion? It says that we are in dangerous territory. But here's the hopeful part: people noticed, creators banded together, hashtags went viral, public support began to shift. Even mainstream media was forced to acknowledge the growing frustration with celebrity lawsuits that seem more about silencing critics than seeking justice. And all of it started with one voice, Candace Owens, saying what many were thinking, but were too afraid to say. She didn't make this about sides, she made it about principle. Whether you like her or not, whether you agree with her conclusions or not, her involvement reminded us all that commentary is not criminal, and criticism is not defamation. It's the foundation of a free society, and the moment we allow that to be taken away, especially under the guise of justice, we've already lost. So where do we go from here? For Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively, the legal process will continue. More documents will surface, more filings will be made. Perhaps one day the full truth will come out untainted by PR agents' digital spin or legal theatrics, perhaps not. But for the rest of us, especially content creators, independent journalists, and curious viewers, this story has already delivered its lesson. Never be afraid to ask questions. Never be afraid to challenge the version of events you're being given. And above all, never let legal intimidation replace public conversation. Because at the end of the day, public figures are not immune from scrutiny, and truth doesn't come from who yells the loudest or who sues the fastest. It comes from honesty, transparency, and the courage to speak even when powerful people don't want you to. Candace Owens saw through the noise, and now so has the world.